All right, hey everybody. This is a little walkthrough of the harmonic synthesizer. I did it yesterday, and I think I wanted to do it again just to kind of clean up my notes. The harmonic synthesizer is a kind of unique twist on additive synthesis, and it will do some stuff that you can't really do with a subtractive synthesizer. And I'm hoping that I can give you kind of an overview of kind of how it works. But I think also this might be a good sort of overview of synthesis in general as well. I don't know, because there's a lot of stuff in here. This is a pretty deep synthesizer, and my hope is that I can salvage something out of this recording and post it somewhere so that you can go back through it. But I'd encourage you to watch along, ask questions. I'll answer them if I can see them in here. Hello. And yeah, and let me kind of give you a quick overview of how this thing works and what it does. So the synth consists of a few different panels. You've got obviously a playable keyboard up here. And this over here, we call the partials matrix. And this is kind of the heart of the partials and folding system that I'll talk about in a minute. You've got some really robust scope areas here to visualize sound in different ways. This synthesizer was started as a visualization and teaching tool. And as I developed it, I started asking myself questions. Well, I wonder what would happen if. I wonder what would happen if I could do this or that. And it quickly became clear that it was a synthesizer, which is sort of what I think of as a laboratory for that very question in audio. What if, right? So down below, each of these has sort of different modules. And by the way, this is a VST plugin. It works as an audio units plugin. It's also now out for iOS. And it will work as an AU-V3 plugin. Finally, took a lot of doing getting this working for touch, but actually you can do some kind of cool stuff in touch as well that you can't do elsewhere. So I'd encourage you to check it out there. You have to buy it from our website. It's currently at the kind of the early adopter price. It's going to go up, I think, to about $79 in probably next week, but it's just a fraction of that now. Hello there. Hello back. Thanks for joining. It's a lot. I think on iOS, I think it's still under $10, but it will probably go up there as well. You can grab a trial in iOS, and you can kind of get a sort of an idea of what it does there's a web version that you can play for free. But the download is currently for sale. Anyway, we got a bunch of different modules here, and I just want to point out that each of these can be kind of opened or closed individually by clicking or tapping here. So my original idea was, wow, this thing would be really cool as just like a very basic stripped down interface like this that you could just kind of plug in and play, and you still can. So I'm going to start there, and then we're going to go through and talk about kind of like all the other stuff it can do, because it does like a lot. So the partials matrix is really the heart of this synthesizer. And in here, you see this thing that is, I call it a reticule. Sorry, this is my little mouse circle that looks like the reticule. It's not. The reticule allows you to drag things up and down. And what we're doing here is we are creating overtones here. We're creating partials. So this type of synthesis is, as I mentioned, this is a twist on additive synthesis, and I like to call this a harmonic synthesizer, because one of the unique things about it is it is also harmony aware. In other words, like we have a whole bunch of scales that it can kind of detect what it thinks you're playing and adapt to it, which alone is kind of interesting. But in terms of let me just reset this. It's on the Phrygian scale now. We're going to go back to chromatic. In terms of an additive synthesizer, additive synthesis is sort of the flip side of the coin from subtractive synthesizer. And like your grandma's synthesizer was probably a subtractive synthesizer. That's sort of the standard that you see most of the time. Full bandwidth waveform with a lot of partials, very dense, and basically it uses filters to subtract away those upper partials until you are left with a sine wave. And this kind of works differently. It works from the bottom up. In other words, we are creating individual partials here from nothing. So each one of these is an oscillator, which means it's very easy to run this thing and have upwards of a couple thousand oscillators running at a time, which is nuts. And this synthesizer is really utterly bonkers in that way. So as we move this up and down, we are basically creating partials. And at the very bottom here, let me make sure I've got everything else off. You know what? I'm just going to reset this to start it here. At the very bottom here, this is just creating one partial. And I can play here. And we are seeing this in mono, by the way. Let me just open this up under the output. If we grab this and change the width over to fully mono, it's going to represent this. This is what's known as a Lissajous display. It's like a goniometer. It's combining the left and right signals. What are we looking at? Good question. If you just joined, this is the harmonic synth. So this is a walkthrough of a really crazy and cool synthesizer. I'm going to kind of show you how it works. That's okay. If anybody catches somebody with questions and can answer in the comments, in case I don't see, I should probably put a badge up here saying what we're doing. But in the meantime, yeah, this is a harmonic synth. And the Lissajous display is going to represent this as a circle. 2 notes. We're going to start to get different shapes here. It's approximating that by using a delayed line for the left and right. As we actually see real true stereo signals, we'll start to see these shapes shift and move in different ways. The way that you are probably accustomed to seeing this is an oscillator, right? And here we can just see that waveform exactly as you might expect in a normal oscillator. And this is not sort of this is not hyperbolic. This is not a representation of what we think this would look like. This is the output of the synthesizer. If I play other stuff, we can watch it moving around and doing stuff. And here you'll see the notes I'm playing. Can everybody hear me okay, I hope, as I'm talking over this? The notes I'm playing are color-coded. So I've got 4 notes playing here. I'm going to release one. Let me turn the envelope off so that it happens instantly. And the idea here is that when you are hearing a really rich sound, what you're not hearing is one note. You are hearing lots and lots of notes. This is the basis of everything that I teach. Is why I built this synthesizer, because you are hearing the basis for what we hear as harmony. You are hearing the basis for how we develop a scale, because only time we ever hear a sine wave is, it's pretty uncommon. Usually what you are hearing is the harmonic series. And we can visualize that harmonic series here by looking at, here is like a FFT. Here I'm going to look at a string. This is kind of what this string would be doing right now if it were playing. And if you were listening to a more complex waveform, you would see 2 motions happening on that string. And 3 and 4. So here you see one happening above the other, and I can superimpose these. Or actually, why don't we put these? Let me move this down and change this so we can see them superimposed. And as we start to add partials, you can see these other notes start to appear up on top here, right? So this is what's called the fundamental, and this here would be the second harmonic, or the first overtone. This is very confusing, and as I add a note, you now see we have 2 colors happening here. But the overtone series for a single note starts with the root, or the fundamental. It plays an octave above, then it plays basically something that sounds very, very much like an octave and a fifth. It's not quite, because the harmonic series doesn't care about our Western scale. It does its own thing, and it builds this note based on that one. But we can see this come into focus, right? As we start adding notes. And we're hearing all of these. In fact, if I want to click here, I can solo them. Well, let's take them out one by one. Here it is without those notes. And we're hearing sorry, I'm not going to buzz this at you because it's obnoxious, but we're hearing all of those notes at once. And if we do this enough, if we pull this all the way to the top like this, where we have all of these notes happening, we have essentially created a sawtooth wave. Right? So a sawtooth wave has all of these different frequencies built into it. You can see them here. It's lots and lots of different notes. And this is why I say this is a harmony-informed synthesizer, because these notes are actually what creates your scale. So your scale is made out of, let's make a low note here. You've got this note. Actually, I'm going to put this on. I'm going to solo these as I go through. So there's the fundamental, the first harmonic. Second one here, first overtone is also a C, basically. Next one approximates basically to a G above here. And you keep... So you basically have like a C chord built into this. And so I got to thinking while I was demonstrating this. I says, Nathan, I says to myself, because that's my name. Nathan, I says, what would happen if this note here were down here? Right? Because that's what we do when we make a scale. This is a 2-to-1 ratio. This is a 3-to-1 ratio. Half of 3-to-1, an octave down is 3-to-2. So this note ends up here in the scale. And I was like, well, what would happen if we basically took these and folded them down into the lower octave? Here's a good Beat Kitchen cooking analogy, right? You're folding eggs. You're trying to like pull make the batter, trying to get this stuff up in here down below. And I decided, well, what would happen if we allowed these upper to move down into the lower ones? And I created this thing called fold. And what fold does is it takes these partials and it moves them down below. And if you're wondering what the heck it sounds like, you'd be that's a fair question. Let's take a look. You can see it happening on the keyboard. And this is now capable of creating sounds that you couldn't exactly do easily with subtractive synthesizer. And of course, then I thought to myself, well, wait a minute, why stop here? Why would I stop at this fundamental? Why not be able to take this stuff and dump it into the bottom registers? What if we take those upper notes and create bass notes out of them? The problem is, as you start bringing, this G down into the lower register and the E and the B flat, you start to kind of lose the original sense of that C, which was the root of the entire thing. That is what's called the tonic. So I created this button to reinforce the tonic. It does a little bit of a subtle thing. And I said, well, if we got tonic, why not add gin? And what gin does is allow you now to pull these upper frequencies down below the fundamental. Let's do this without tonic on for now. So now we get these really deep, low notes. And it becomes very, very expressive to say like, well, now we can start moving this around. And this is where a synthesizer really comes into its own, because everything in a synthesizer needs to be controllable by something else. So you can go into the partials matrix here and select different types of modifiers to do that. So, maybe, expression or aftertouch or the mod wheel to move these things around. Right now, I'm just doing it with my finger, which actually is one of the things that makes this very fun to play on a touch device, because you can take a couple fingers and move it around and sculpt and play expressively. But before I do that, I kind of want to talk about some of the other stuff that this synth does, because it's like, this is probably one of the most unique features, but this is the feature that allows you to then kind of do a lot of the other really kind of special stuff it does. And I'll keep my eye out for questions. It doesn't look like I have any, but if we go in here, I'm going to go back to the Lissajous display, because what I'd like to do is also show what happens when we show this in full width. So normally in mono, what we're seeing is this represented as a vertical line, and in stereo, anything that's out of phase is going to be represented as a horizontal line. In fact, we can make this really, this phase coherent meter is showing like this is completely out of phase. In fact, if I were to sum it to mono, it almost completely goes away, right? These are the phases of the two sides canceling out. And why? Why would they cancel? The reason is that I set this so that every one of these partials is getting panned to its own position in the stereo field. And that happens over in this area called Sculpt. Sculpt is set right now to basically allow you to move between different wave shapes. So if I set this back at our old friend, the sawtooth wave, and we can view it over here. Well, you're just going to believe me for now. If I set this as a sawtooth wave and I enable Sculpt, what we want to do is move this morph slider over to this position where it puts it in sawtooth. And this is the formula, basically, to create a sawtooth wave. We have every single partial, both odd and even, receding at, with this particular, whatever, this formula. Different wave shapes have different formulas. So, for example, a square wave, actually, we will go in, we'll look at this here, square. Oscillator shows sawtooth. And if I choose a square wave, right, you'll notice it's every other partial. So these are only odd numbered partials with a square wave. That is how you make a square wave. It's this, this ratio of partials, these are the ingredients and this is how much, and you get that cake. What's cool is that we can morph from one to the other. And triangle, of course, has every other partial, but they are out of phase. So here, these are the polarity for each one of these partials, which we can change and switch at will. You see that kind of ruins the shape of the triangle, but that'll reset it. And of course, you can go over here and you can create your own. So I can say, all right, well, let's take my square wave here, and I'm going to copy this over to position A. Can you see this okay? I'm sure it's very, very small on Instagram, but I can blow it up if you need me to a little bit. I'm going to copy this over to position A, and I go to position A here, and I grab it. And why don't I also copy this to position B? So when I slide between A and B, I get no change. However, maybe on position B, what I want to do is I want to set the overtones so that they are like a sawtooth wave, right? That's pan, sorry. I'll change this here. We'll invert the polarity. Let's grab a bunch of here like this. And we could maybe create a line over here. Sorry, I need to do this on position B. So boom, 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 boom. We'll invert a bunch of partials just for fun, and we'll draw. What you're hearing now is also almost like a vowel, right? Because vowels are made from formants, ah, e, o. Those are fixed resonances in your body that don't change when you change a note. Think about it like, when you speed yourself up or slow yourself down, you sound like a chipmunk or a monster. That's because when you sing a high or low note, you don't actually physically change in size, right? Like you stay the same, but the container for your note doesn't move, but you're putting a different pitch through there. So those internal resonances stay. What you can do though is now we can also, when you see a big bump and a hole kind of between these areas, we experience these as formants. And what I've got now is I've got this area over here that's got like these big formant bumps in here, and this other one that doesn't. And of course, I could modulate this back and forth quickly and create a pretty dramatic sound. We could also take these formants and shift them. And if you're wondering, wow, I wish I could do that to a guitar track or my vocal? The answer is you can, because this synthesizer will also take an external sidechain input. So everything that we're doing here, we can operate on an external source, which creates some like really, really interesting stuff. Instead of looking at the phase, however, we can also look at these are the format. We can also look at the panning. So here, every other partial is panned, left and right. And that is why we get this kind of wide shape on the Lissajous display. If we were to zero this out, we could create all sorts of interesting kind of panning motion. And these get written into this Sculpt matrix. So this is a way to do some really extreme kind of shaping. I'm going to reset this over here. We're going to put this back on a sawtooth where every other partial is panned. One thing you'll notice here, by the way, and this is another really interesting, I don't know what to talk about next, but I want to talk about tuning and intonation here, because part of what this does, which is really, I think, exquisite, is the way it treats a tuning system. Before I do that, though, these are all basically sine waves. We're just running a bunch, like we got 128 oscillators running for every note, and each one is playing a sine wave. But you probably know that if you took a filter and ran some white noise through it, and you just increased one very narrow bandwidth, you would be able to kind of pull out sort of like a whistly kind of airy note from that filter. So instead of using the sine wave as a source, one of the things you can do in this synth is to use a resonant filter, which means we can now take white noise here. And this white noise, instead of a sine wave creating this, we get this kind of air that happens in here. And there is the tuning stuff. Let's come back to this, because we're close to actually being able to make a cool sound as opposed to one that's just a demo. In order to do that, though, let's talk a little bit about the way tuning works. Because in a perfect system, I'm going to go back here. Every note would be always in tune with every other note. But in reality, we can't do that in a regular scale. As I mentioned, this note here creates this note and this note and this note, and you get a scale built on that. But the problem is that by the time you're up to an E, this is not going to conform to the E that really plays on your keyboard, because if it did, you could only play in one key and everything else would start sounding out of tune. That is how this comes sort of out of the box. This temperament system is set right now to just intonation, which means that every note is in tune with whatever it senses as either the key center labeled up here or what it detects you playing right now. So if I play a C and I play a G on top of it, you see I get this very, very stable kind of system. If I play a whole chord, this is a very, very true kind of tuning for this note. The thing is that this won't play nicely with anything else. If you want this to sound like every other synthesizer, you have to make each of these a little out of tune, which means that you will start to see this moving around a whole bunch. Let me take this very beautiful sounding C chord and adjust it so that it sounds like the one on your keyboard, like this. Right? That's what you're used to hearing. You would not be able to play anything nearly that complex if you had this slid over the other way. Let me show you. because you do great until you started leaving the scale. Let's give it some more harmonic content so that we can hear a little better. Can you hear okay? I hope you can. Let's go here. Let's move this over and we'll go back to lower the overtones. You start to get these really, really eerie things that happen within tuning as you do this. I'm going to reset the synth right now. Just kind of put it back where it was. We'll fold it a bit. Reinforce the tonic. One of the interesting things that also happens with tuning is that notes are sometimes out of tune with themselves. What I mean by that is that in a very, very perfect world, if you look at a string vibrating, you will see everything as an even subdivision of that string. The problem, however, is that it doesn't necessarily... hold on, let me get my little visual back here. I have to make a note to fix this. Sometimes this stacked or overview button disappears. You have to reset this to make it come back. I'll fix that in the next update. These are all subdivisions of a string, but a string is a three-dimensional object, not a two-dimensional object like this. And so it has properties that are unpredictable. And as the string vibrates, it operates, it has like its own kind of rigidity and stiffness. It's almost more like a pipe than it is a string. And so what happens is the stuff on the upper end of the keyboard starts to go sharp, which means that the upper notes are not in tune with themselves. That is why you cannot use a guitar tuner on a piano, right? Because you need to tune those notes so that they sound good with the upper notes. And so basically what we do is we need to stretch the upper tuning of these partials. This ends up giving you sort of this kind of like piano-like or bell-like sound. And you'll hear it in a piano, by the way. Like if you play an old upright piano or something in the bottom strings, and they always, even like one string kind of sounds like janky and out of tune. That's what's creating that sound. So a sound can be out of tune with itself, and we can replicate that and give it some inharmonicity, which means that the notes are no longer in tune with themselves. We can stretch it like we would a piano. Why don't we give this a little bit of an envelope to play with it? Because, yeah, well, so like, look, if you are a beginner, I'm just responding to a question here. If you're a beginner, this, like, just remember you can't break anything. And there's always a reset button here that you can go back. There's actually a random button too. You can click it and just like roll the dice and see what you get. This is a really fun way to just sort of experiment and find out what would happen. This can be really intimidating, I think, as a beginner. But just remember, you can collapse all this stuff down and just wiggle the knobs. And start having fun. That's all anybody expects you to do. But here, what would really benefit this, I think, a lot would be an envelope. so that instead of just going brah and staying there, we could make it go bing, or, you know, like sort of have the sound has a bit of a script when it starts and when it ends. And a normal envelope would be something like this, where we adjust how long it takes to right? Like we get all sorts of fun stuff happening here with this envelope, and we can adjust the attack and the release and the, you know, the ADSR, everything here. But I think there's an opportunity to do something here with a harmonic synth that you cannot necessarily do with a subtractive synthesizer. And one example here is this dedicated envelope, which is just for harmonics. Right now, this envelope is saying, hey, when we play the sound, it hits right away, bam, and then it goes down a little bit, and it keeps going until I release my finger. And then off. And if I want it to go away, no matter what I do, I can go like this. I'm holding the note down, but it doesn't care because it goes away. This is sort of the kind of the volume script that the note follows. But we can do this on a per partials. Yeah, by the way, this is soloing when I cut. This is intentional. It's supposed to do that. You can listen to these individual notes. Actually, we should make it so they only play in the display as well. But if we turn on this harmonic envelope, what we get is a new envelope. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to turn it on. And right now, this is not going to do anything because we haven't associated it with any of the actual harmonics. If I turn this on to all the harmonics, now it's turning itself down as it goes away. Let's go back to, let's look at it here. But if we only wanted to operate on some of the harmonics, right? Let's say we didn't want the fundamental or that note to go away when we play the note. We could re-enable I think it might be time to put a little effects on here for fun. Let's put some reverb on here to see what happens. Here, there, we might want to fix the tuning. But you can see where we can start to get some really kind of more expressive sounds here, because this harmonic gate, harmonic envelope is actually part of the mix here. Here's another little piece that I think we need a longer sound in order to hear. Let's say we make this nice and long. I'll turn this envelope off. So it's got this kind of whine happening now in here. That note. I'm going to also look at this area called Overtone Scan, because Overtone Scan allows us to look at each one of these partials, and we can iterate through it almost like it's an arpeggiator. And where an arpeggiator basically looks at what notes you are playing on the keyboard and plays them one after the other in some kind of pattern. This works a little differently. This is basically looking at any note that you play and saying this note has a whole bunch of notes in it, and we're going to focus on each of those partials up and down as we go. And the reverb actually might not be our friend for this, but we're going to take a listen. I'm going to turn this on, and let's just see what happens. let's take off harmonics envelope here because we've killed most of the overtones we need in order to hear it. So here, let's focus the sound. Let's bring this into mid. So now it's running through this bank. It's going up and down. There are different shapes that we could use to go down through here. And you'll see also now over here under partials, it is suggesting a scale. It's listening to these notes and it's saying, hey, I think there's a scale that belongs here. We could also, by the way, turn this to mono. It's choosing one scale here, but each of these notes has its own scale. You can change the speed. Let's turn this guy back on. And the envelope. That is my cat. Nobody's ever fed this cat. We can choose random spots on here. We're going to bring the tuning back into equal temperament here. So it doesn't... and of course you can use subtractive techniques like a standard filter if you wanted to. Let's turn this on. A little resonance. We can create new modulations here. Anyway, there's a lot that you can do in this synth. We could pick a new scale for the... It's suggesting either a minor scale. Let's choose... It's saying, hey, try C minor. Or C Dorian, maybe. Let's try that. And now, up here... This becomes very fun to play on an iPad, by the way. I think we should get rid of the envelopes because we can't hear very well. Bring the output here, create maybe more stereo width and some drive. Prefer it without the filter. Harmonic gate, all sorts of other stuff here to play with. Oh, you know what? I was going to end up, but you know what? I got to show you some of the best stuff. Stick with me. Here's why, is that this, I told you that this will also take a sample, which it will. And to do that, we probably want to have a good look at the Sculpt interface again. Let's turn this back on. And here we're seeing level. I'm going to back off the... Here a little bit. So we can change our formant. And there's kind of our vowel sounds. Add some air back into this. Let's add some of the partials that we lost. We can bring the upper partials down in to match the lower ones, or the lower ones up to match the upper ones, almost like the old THS effect. This is something I called Converge. Which I just think is tremendously cool. So imagine now if we could take that and import audio and do something with that. Well, one way we might do that would be to go in here and say, all right, we've got a really basis, we got the nice basis for a cool sound. We go into this audio input module here, and that's down here. There's a lot that you can do in here. For example, let's just load, I actually don't know if I have any sounds loaded in here right now. Let's load an audio. We don't have any here. Let's make one. I've got to kick this cat over here. Hang on. Hey, you. Not now. I know. I'm not hurting the cat. She just doesn't like being picked up. Okay. Spray. I know it sounds like I was hurting that cat, but she's fine. She just complains. And she's 20 years old too, so give her a break. So we got this sound. Normally what I would do is I would just record right into it, but this needs to take its input from somewhere. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a sound like this. Here is the beginning of some snoop. And I'll grab, I don't know, let's grab this much. I'm going to save this as its own audio file. Oh, you can't see what I'm doing because I'm over on the other side of the screen here. Sorry. We're going to save this as an audio file. I'll just put it in my downloads folder. Test AF. Sorry, so I'm over in here. I'm just taking this audio file that I grabbed. I'm going to move it over in here, and let's just see if I can load it in from my desktop, assuming I did this right. Downloads, rather. There, test AIF. This sounds like this, by the way. Oh, you know what? Let's get a little more of it, shouldn't we? Let's just get the last little bit. I'll go here. Grab this, we'll save this. We're just saving this as test. We're going to overwrite it. Okay. Back in here, we're going to grab this sound. We're going to load it in. We go downloads. It sounds like this. What? Did I not do it? Hang on. I'm a dummy. The problem is I can't do this and listen at the same time because it's on a sidechain. I could. I'm just being lazy. I'm gonna grab this. Control F. 3 times. Oh, it's because it's named with a 1 after it. That's what I did. We'll do here. I think I see what I did. All right. 3rd time's a charm. Something very strange going on here. This is not saving where I thought it would. All right, well, we'll just use this one then. Whatever. I'm going to open it. And the idea here is this. You've been very patient. Sorry about that. Is that now we are using this little piece of audio as You could think of it a little bit like a vocoder. So if I turn this module off, we have this sound here. And what this is going to do is going to resynthesize this. So instead of having one envelope for the sound, and I should also mention, by the way, that you can use the audio input as an envelope. So as you make things louder or softer, you can control other parts of the synthesizer by those envelopes. But this basically creates a whole series of new envelopes for every partial that's going to follow it and kind of create some of this sound. The question is, sort of, how much do we resynthesize that sound? So when it's dry, it should sound pretty much like it did in the beginning. Zoom back out so you can see. It's going back very, very fast. And it's applying this applying the, it's working almost like as a sampler, although it's trying to detect what pitch it actually was. What we can do though is we can change this resynthesis level. So instead of starting here, we're creating oscillators now that create those sounds. Let us pull this out of here for now because I don't want it to sound, I don't want to add the air back in yet. I want you to hear it kind of happen. So what we'll do here is grab this and so now we get bum bum, right? That's the and it's operating back and forth through those overtones as it plays. What we really want to do is get some kind of looping here. And one thing that's interesting is as we play through, we can choose a point at which to freeze the sound. So here, we can move that. So the motion that's happening here is coming from Overtone Scan. If we turn this off, here, you'll hear it. And this becomes like a kind of granular synthesis. You take a moment like this and change the depth of and the speed. Let's move this over here maybe. We'll bring our air back into it. Instead of using white noise, we can use the sample itself. This thing's bonkers, you guys. Like, I don't know where to start. You can run this as a vocoder. We could take this with a live input actually through the track. So instead of using the sample, we could grab a sound. What we need to do is we need to set a sidechain input here. So we take our input from this audio track that's got the Snoop Dogg on it, and we can just now play it. And it won't do anything until we play a note. It needs that note in order to play, but let's just see what happens. And let's unload this sample, clear this out. This is drop it like it's hot, right? Let's see if we get to the vocals. Let's see if we can get a little bit of the... This is when Instagram's going to shut me down because they're like, you're using a track. Let's switch it around so that instead of this being the modulator, this becomes the carrier. Let's remove some of the... Copy this setting over into B so we don't lose it. Start modulating through. I don't know, guys. Look, gang, this thing is kind of bananas. And I think that's about as much time as I can spend to take you through it. There's probably a lot of stuff that you haven't seen. This is a very, very expressive and capable instrument, which does really deep bass, really cool glitchy sounds. And yeah, I've been promising people that I would show them what it does. And every time I do, it kind of turns into a rabbit hole. I'm not sure it makes a great lesson, but hopefully you learned something about the synthesizer. And if you have any questions, please reach out. It's available on my website and in the App Store right now. And it's still at the kind of early adopter price. It's going to go up. I think the target next week is going to be $79. So check it out. And thanks for joining. Cheers.